Hi everyone, this is our project for Data for Diplomas. Our goal is to use data to help increase the national graduation rate to 90% by 2020. We found in our analysis that the most important factors for improving graduation rates are household stability and economic security. We also found that weather plays a very important role. On the other hand, we found that school spending and low food access may not be very important for improving graduation rates. This diagram shows how we thought about this problem. We think that the environments that students live in greatly influence how likely they are to graduate. These environments include the household, school, neighborhood, and region. In each of these environments, we came up with targeted hypotheses around these 5 areas: household stability, economic security, household education, weather, food access, and school spending. Here's a flow diagram showing how we mapped all of this data together. Now, next we explored our graduation rate data and we found a couple of problems with it. But the biggest challenge was that schools with cohort sizes under 200 students had graduation rates given in broad ranges instead of precise numbers, which would reduce the accuracy of our estimates. So after some analysis and deliberation, we decided to limit our data to schools with cohorts greater than 200, but we made sure to stress test our model to make sure it's generalizable. Now we got into some exploratory analysis of our key variables and graduation rates. You can check out the graphs and interactive visualizations we have made here. Then we moved on to the predictive model. We used a random forest for this analysis, which is generally a very robust model. Our first random forest had 140 variables and had an out-of-sample R-squared of 0.68. The nice thing about random forests is that they tell you what the most important features are, which you can see in this graph. The most important features in this model were household stability and economic security variables. Weather and school spending variables were also important, but notably, food access does not show up on the list. We narrowed this list of 140 variables down to 7 variables. When we build a model off of just these 7, we get an R-squared of 0.60, which is pretty astounding. We were able to explain 60% of the variation in the data with just these 7 variables, which again include household stability, economic security, weather, and school spending variables. Then we asked the question, how would the national graduation rate change if we change one of these variables across all schools in the US? We answered that question with these graphs here. So for example, this graph looks at how graduation rates would change if the percentage of economically disadvantaged students in all schools changed. If percent of ECD students decreased by 50% in each school across the US, our model predicts that the national graduation rate would increase to 86%. Now, this graph does the same thing for school spending. Surprisingly, this shows that while decreasing school spending would decrease graduation rates, increasing it would not increase graduation rates because of this plateau. There are diminishing returns, which is a very interesting insight. And lastly, we close off our analysis with a list of policy recommendations and next steps.
Now let's move over to the interactive website where you can see the interactive visualization. Here we see a map of the various school districts where they are represented by the points, and we then see a toolbar on the right hand where you can explore different graduation rates and how schools are distributed across America with different graduation rates. And here's another map where you can explore the location of school districts, but specifically on cohort size, since cohort size was a critical factor in the data issue that we discussed. Then finally, we have a feature importance interactive visualization where you can see a specific decision tree and how it's represented relative to nodes and how the nodes represent how important those features are. For example, here we see percent female only household is the topmost branch, hence representing that feature as very critical, and then percent ECD in cohort as a second branch, and so on. So you can explore different features here. And then finally, we have the notebook itself where we publish it online, and you can review this at your convenience. Thank you very much.